Hello everybody, Conrad here, and welcome to the first official Assetto Corsa mod review. So this was a large part of the Let's Race with Cone series I did last season, where in a large part we played in Assetto Corsa just through the casual races, and in that time we actually looked at quite a few mods. Well, since Assetto Corsa has kind of shot off into its own series with the career mode, and Let's Race with Cone is now primarily going to be for iRacing, I decided to make a separate series just for reviewing mods. This is my first attempt at it, so be easy on me, but we are starting with a very exciting car, the Mazda 787b. Alrighty, as we're looking here in the photo mode, this 3D model was created by Patrick Sander, and the model itself is pretty phenomenal. The detail is right on par with the factory Assetto Corsa cars, and in some cases probably even better. There's some minor details of the undercarriage and things like that that seem maybe a little more 2D represented than I would hope for a complete, Assetto Corsa car. But as for modded content, like I mentioned already, this is definitely one of the best done cars that I have seen so far. There is also a selection of liveries. So we have the most famous, this orange and green 55, and its partner, the lighter orange and green. We also have some other choices. There is even a martini one that is very nice looking. But as far as the detail of the body goes, definitely very impressive, extremely photogenic. I have seen some awesome screenshots out there of people using this car and this model to make, photorealistic screenshots. So no real complaints as far as the model goes. Alrighty, as we get ready to take this car out on the track and shake it down and see what we think about the physics and such, we can't even begin without mentioning the sound. The sounds were done by El Morici 90, and luckily there is so many sound clips available for this car because of its, historically well-known kind of awesome, unique sound that they obviously had a lot of sound clips to work with. But not only that, they've used them perfectly. We can hear idling here from outside the car. It sounds extremely realistic. I have not heard a 4-rotor 787b in person, but I had a lot of time with the modern RX-8 3-rotors, which used to run in the Grand Am series, and this poppy kind of uneven idle is exactly how they sounded. So let's hop into the car. Let's put the clutch in so we stop destroying the transmission. So you can see we are sitting on the right hand of the car. We can look around a little bit. Unfortunately, I'm still stuck with this 720p small field of view, but the interior of the car is also pretty well modeled. It's maybe a little blocky in some spots, but overall the level of detail is great. The way the handle is there, the roll bar looks very realistic with the foam. You can see the zip tie on the foam there, holding it down. So yeah, it's extremely believable looking. Got a nice kind of primitive heads-up display. They don't have as much information as a modern car, but everything that you need. 2,000 RPM rev limit. This car does have a regular H-pattern shifter, and that is kind of tricky. You're not used to that in a prototype car format. But let's start heading out on the track. And videos I have seen of this car in modern times, people do still run these cars in historic track conditions or events. They very often struggle with the shifter. Maybe they're distracted by the insane sounds coming out from behind the car, but overall, that is something that I very often see in videos of people driving this car, is struggling with the shifter, getting the clutch grab point right, stuff like that. Now, an important factor for that is it is a rotary engine, so it has a extremely steep torque curve. So if you're down here in that 3,000 range and you mat the gas, you can see it doesn't really start taking off till you get into that 6,000 range. Now, it still has an obscene amount of power, even in the low end. It's not like your street, you know, RX-7, RX-8, where they're absolutely dead at the bottom. But it has still a lot of that very heavy top end. And it's a little bit awkward for downshifting, I've noticed. You gotta kind of time it a little bit later than you're used to. And then on these upshifts, you can't actually over-rev this engine. So they have it set to an 8,500 rev limit. I've seen in the videos of this car, they set it a little bit lower than that for race conditions and such. Oh yeah. This is obviously pre-ABS, pre-traction control. You can kind of see it there. I was putting my foot to the floor in second gear, not getting wheel spin. Starting to get a feel for the shifter now. Physics for this car were done by David Dominguez, I believe. And I am using the baseline setup right now. I haven't spent a whole lot of time with this car as far as trying to get it into race configuration or anything like that. The baseline setup's very neutral. A little bit of understeer in there to keep you on track. The car has kind of expected prototype handling. Oh yeah. Just love hearing that engine bark when you downshift. The power band is actually pretty useful because it gives you that option to kind of almost use it as traction control. Because as you're coming, okay. It said, "I don't think so, Mr. Cone Dodger. I think you have to respect me." But yeah, you can, if you let it get down into the lower RPM band as you accelerate through out of the turns, you can be a little less sensitive with the throttle than you are in some of these super fast cars. You still have to give it some respect though. You're still talking in the neighborhood of 700 horsepower below your foot in an extremely light car that is somewhat low downforce. They weren't your 80s and 70s super low downforce cars. But this car was really built for Le Mans. And in this era of Le Mans, pre-chicanes and all that garbage, these cars were built for speed. And it does have that. So up at speed here, and the car is pinging RPM. Once again, note about the sound. You don't hear the loops, you don't hear it braking or anything like that. Sometimes in those sampled loops you can hear where the end and the start is, but not getting any of that. The pitch changes as you would expect it to. Sounds quite a bit different inside the car than it does outside. You're getting a lot of gearbox, a lot of gearbox noise. And overall it's just a little bit muffled, so it doesn't have quite that raw kind of ear-piercing sound inside. So back onto the physics, and now that I'm getting a little bit better feel for the car, still a very enjoyable car to drive, probably a very difficult car to race, however, as it is pretty knife edge at times. Especially around a track like Spa here. One thing I have noticed is that the cockpit does this weird jittery thing on the straightaways. I understand the car is going to bump around and move at speed, but the jitteriness almost seems maybe a little too non-randomized, if you know what I mean. Like, it doesn't feel like the car is bumping around, it feels like the car is vibrating. That could be an Assetto Corsa wide thing, that could be part of the mod. I just never really noticed it in any other cars. Obviously, like I mentioned, I'm using a very poor field of view due to my limited screen space. But overall, the ability to see with this car is pretty limited. That windshield comes right down into your face, the A-arm there. And then you got the mirrors, which are in a pretty decent location, but no rear view. No rear view cameras just yet. We're talking early 90s here. We're still recording the VHS. Whoa, 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 whoa. The car does not respond well to being in low RPM under turn load, if you know what I mean. It prefers to be up in that high rev band. It seems like maybe the differential gets very loaded up at low RPM. Alright, I think that's all of the immediate first thoughts I have about the car. I'm now going to try and get a good lap in, and we will throw it into the TV camera mode so we can really hear this thing sing around the Spa circuit. So there we have it, the Mazda 787b. Probably one of my favorite race cars of all time, and definitely my favorite mod for Assetto Corsa so far. It's an extremely difficult car to drive, but is also very rewarding when you get it right. It's one of those cars that's really on a razor edge, similar to those 80s and 90s, early 90s F1 cars. But it has a little bit more of a linear control than a Formula 1 car. But to be honest, I would enjoy this car based off nothing else but the sound it makes. If you enjoyed this and you would like to see me review more cars or tracks in Assetto Corsa, let me know. And let me know which cars or tracks you would like to see reviewed. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.